Push the button.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of a modern-day bohemian, a man that has touched the lives, and wallets, most of ours obviously, of so many people and left them spiritually richer for the experience. You are loved by those who have had the fortune to spend time in your company, and the glue that binds such a diverse panoply of people. Tonight they want to pay homage to you. Mark Henry Glenda, modern-day bohemian, raconteur, good friend and son, this is your life. Where's Jamie?
Just getting him a drink. I'm just getting you a drink.
Okay. Cut, edit. Good girl. Yeah, yes.
I'm going to need some sort of therapy or something. Checked into the priory after.
You ready? Born to an Englishman Glenn and your French mother Maurice on the 22nd of May 1959, the same day as Morrissey, you started life as a live, good-looking, if a little effete baby, characteristics that would last your whole life. As the years pass, you become aware of your natural showmanship. Sorry, again, can you see? Attractiveness. A theatrical bent appears, and very early nods to the French existentialist as illustrated in your early war plan.
That was my boy George.
Do you want me to come and see? You cool? Yeah, but Jane, you can't see.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's always your... I'll come this side, right? See if it works. Can you see?
I can see her.
Good girl. Ladies and gentlemen, our first guest speaker to give an anecdote on Mark's early life, and I'm delighted he's here tonight because he loves Britain's Got Talent and I've had to drag him out, is Mr. Glendinning, Mark's father.
Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. I'm bewildered as he is, because I can't remember a single thing about his early life.
Give us the nursery anecdote, when you picked him up from nursery.
Oh, well, yes. There are a few odd items that stand out in my mind, and this was happened to be one of them, and somebody will probably recognise the trainings that he later adopted. He was, for a few days, deposited in a rather high-class Kensington Mayfair establishment called, the day nursery for little future bankers and merchant bankers and debutantes and all the rest of it. And I didn't think it was his style. But anyway, I was delegated to go and collect him on his first day, which I did. He was led to the door, tears were streaming down his face. I seized his grubby little hand, marched him up the street and said, "What's wrong? Didn't you like it there?" And between sobs he said, "I asked for champagne and they gave me milk."
Aged 8, your stepmother Yvonne enters your life. An actress and teacher, she's been a huge influence ever since. And tonight, to give an earliest memory of you, Mark, please introduce Yvonne Glendinning.
Mark, I don't know if you remember your 9th birthday, but I certainly...
Not vivid.
Dandy. I certainly do. Your mother Maurice told us that you wanted to have your birthday lunch at Robert Carrier's. I thought, That's rather sophisticated for a 9-year-old.
Precociously.
Precocious. At the lunch, you didn't seem particularly interested in the food. Seemed in rather a hurry to finish. And a little later, made your excuses and left. Off you went to the antique shop across from Carrier's, which had the most amazing collection of lead soldiers, which at that time was your obsession. Later to be surpassed by your obsession with football. But that's another story.
I must hasten to add that my obsession with men in uniform is a phase that
It's like, okay, this is a wonderful picture. Take a look at it and then look again, okay? Glenda, at this early stage, were there signs of your lifelong fascination with the macabre, the love of the weird and wonderful? You went to New End School, then King Alfred, where you were a gifted student. But your mother Maurice had contacts and you were switched to the Percival School for the Musically Talented Children, where you played the clarinet.
very bad.
Yes. Thankfully, musicianship was not the route you would take. Your intellect, strong beliefs and desire for leadership drove you towards a political life, and in 1979 you were accepted at Warwick University, where you studied politics. Here you hone your political skills. You stand for election as union president, wearing a grey coat to dodge bags of urine on the hustings while demolishing the arguments of your political foes. You meet and become lifelong friends of some of the country's most influential people, surrounding yourself with a crowd of great minds. Unfortunately, they can't be here tonight. But here to say a few words, a man who's played a great role in putting this evening together. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Reverend Dave.
One, two. Can you all hear me at the back? Can you all hear me? Good. Just have to see which pair of spectacles, because time is creeping on for us all, isn't it, Mark? We have got a few notes here. Yes, I was asked to speak tonight, and we're here to celebrate 50 glorious years of Mark Henry Glendinning. A man of many parts, most of them spare. But I've been elected or chucked up to tell you a little bit about those who don't know, a bit about how he used to be when he was at college. Came up in 1978, as much as one could ever come up there, you know, it isn't like Oxford, it was a building site for about 20 years. Anyway, Mark came up to read politics. As to why you chose them or they chose you, who knows? But it was a good year that year. It was an intake for politics, was the good, the bad, the ugly, and West Ham. Gavin, Fergus, Colin Fisher, probably ugly, and Paul Butler, West Ham, and Cruncher Cramp, who I'm sure you... the less said about Cruncher Cramp, the better. But we didn't really know much about him in his first year, other than that, as you've seen, he was a bit tidy, with the little moustache and cravats and sports jackets, and he wore a collar and tie to go to lectures, and that's about as much as we really kind of knew him. And then he had the normal student predilections and interests too, didn't you? Football, QPR and international football. Used to play Sunday league, student politics, collecting toy soldiers, addressing people by their surnames, serial killers, facial deformities, Soho's criminal milieu, all the normal student predilections and interests. And he went home at the weekends too. He used to slope off. You didn't really ever know much about him. And not being one for the bar either. But student politics is what triggered the transition from caterpillar to chrysalis, and then from chrysalis to death's head moth. And in the back in the day, the rather toxic day, his name arrived on the lips of the cream of the left-wing intellectuals at our university, mainly sociology students with affluent parents and Mockney Estuarine twangs, you know. And it was always a racist. No, we did not say it shouldn't be allowed on campus. And so his credo seems to just have annoyed the cardboard trots. And when he stood, I think the first time as some kind of student senator or something like that. And he appeared the first time at your hustings, led by the combined forces of the left, led by Vince Chesworth, and backed up by the simple-minded and easily led like John Fine and Sam Singh. They organised that they were going to throw liquids at you of all descriptions, including bags of piss. Yeah, and stow your head in if they could catch you as well. However, you kind of got wind of that, so he arrived at Hustings dressed as a trawlerman, with a sou'wester and he just about got off of that. But from that point on, he was normally seen dressed in a khaki grey Mac. Which is, that was kind of how it was. And then there were the girls, and there were a few. And what can I say? There were a few. That's the delightful Sarah Harding girls allowed indeed. She went off, didn't she? She went off in her last year, the term you go to Italy when you do history. And she wrote you every day. And, you know, Mark, if you'd written back just once, it would have helped. Honestly, yeah. But there again, he was taking relationship counselling from Simon Buttery, so that's probably why. Anyway, you were a lifelong stranger to domestos and domesticity. I think one of the best stories is, in your third year, the campus cleaners wouldn't clean your flat, would they? They said, we're not going in there. Why was that then? Oh, well, in the days when we used to have glass milk bottles, the boys didn't rinse and clean. They, in fact, wouldn't even rinse and clean to return. They just didn't rinse. And there were about 200 bottles in his flat, each with about a quarter of an inch of milk that was slowly turning green. And you had to be fairly strong to enter the flat with the cheesy smell. Anyway, Mark always claimed that this was serious scientific research. It was being undertaken and it was not to be disturbed collection of rare penicillin culture. Your contribution, a premature and selfless contribution, I may say, towards the third world, ridding it of its more unpleasant frictions. As for the rich green and brown hues on his ensuite sink, the less said about them, the better. But at this time too, he took to prowling campus in the middle of the night. He said he was going to Roots Hall for a bath. Now, it was probably because his own ensuite, you wouldn't have wanted to take a bath in there. Or it might not have been. It could have been anything else, and he's going to take that one to his grave, I'm sure, as to what I'm off to Roots Hall for a bath meant. But there's a pattern forming here, isn't there? Cooking, anathema. Cleaning, anathema. Eat out or die. Yeah? Floor, a receptacle for newspapers, clippings, old clothes, sweeties, anything. And this insomnia and night prowling. But encouraged by his political friends, and I have to check this here. You stood for treasurer, did you not? That's a bit like Gordon Brown being the... could I write you a cheque for 40 million? That's don't cast it for about 3 weeks about a right with you. Yeah, that was the man.
You still doing that?
I know. Well, I wasn't going to say that because I would have got to say it.
So far.
But some of your friends, I mean, they're a strange one. Sometimes I've got close my eye. You probably have heard about these people, but Bernard Capel, I close my eyes, a prematurely suit-wearing Mr. Capel, Conservative parliamentary election agent for Stevenage, one would have thought. Warwick Hembury, what a wonderful name. If ever there was a candidate for claiming X's for duck castles and cleaning the moat, who was your boy? Steve Randell, him with the blue-tinted spectacles. Bisexual porn star? I'm quite sure he probably ended up as that at least. And then there's Mr. Hoyle. Is Mr. Hoyle here tonight? His Eminence Greaves. I was warned off by him as have a go if you think you're hard enough. Thank you, Mr. Hoyle. So I'm not. But politics comes afterwards. We're talking about your personal stuff, and one thing that I really recall, you're always very, very patient with everybody, and there was a week, what do you call it, a rag week, when there was a phantom, it was in the era of the Tiswas phantom flan flinger, and you were kind of a mixture of Mr. Nice Guy that everyone loved to hate on campus and #1 Nazi in the world. And you were very, very popular, as I recall. In fact, it was Return of the Mac again. The Mac came out, he was flanged about every quarter of an hour for about an 8-day period. So that was, I mean, where do we stop? Your costume for the Fura party, the Fura bunker party? No? That poor...
Marlene Dietrich.
Yes, indeed. He liked a bit of the cross-dressing. There might be some pictures up later on, I'm not sure. There was a Swedish speaker on your course in industrial relations lecture, was there not? The Volkswagen. And you found that the funny accent of the man made you wriggle until you almost pissed yourself. Obviously, he still does.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the Fran Sopsit and Keith Saunders tale, and I'm sure that's probably one of your... Was it actually you that was there that entered this Trotskyist flat to find Keith Saunders communing with Big Fran? Or was that just an apocryphal tale?
I think they were having sex and somebody was eating baked beans out of a can,
Cold baked
watching
beans.
television while this was going on.
That's right. In a sleeping bag on the floor, there was a watcher talking, and then there was a trot in an armchair eating cold baked beans. So much for the socialist era of free love. Delightful stuff. But that's kind of at the back of it all. There was also this weird concern that he had that get called up for French National Service. Do you remember that? It went on for years. And some days he was up and looking forward to visiting foreign countries and killing people, and some days he was down and planning to go to grounds somewhere in Hertfordshire, like a latter-day Road Mail. And that's where he's ended up, going to grounds somewhere in Hertfordshire. But I tell you, Mark, I don't think they would have taken you. Even if you turned up for the induction, I'm quite sure it would have been... Il est fou, quoi. And even if they had taken you, I can see you turning up in Corsica and saying, no, we don't go direct. There's no restaurants, it's the mess for you, and also you can't bring Filipino cleaners either. So, there you go. here we are. We're all here with the Sancerre slap. We'll call it the Sancerre slap. But the nice thing about Mark is always charming and amusing company. He's very rarely angry. He's rarely judgmental. Well, I hear a lot from Paul, and he's lived with you in more ways than one, we're told. But the reason why we're here is, you always get the feeling with Mark that it's all part of a game, and it's an important game, and it's all that really matters. But all of us who've got to know him from left to right, there isn't any such thing with Mark. Politics and friendship is actually secular, and those, particularly from the left, who've made friends with him and have stayed friends with him for a very long time, from the other side, and quite a few from the far side too, have stayed friends. So, Mark, hello. Happy birthday.
Well done, Dave. Fantastic. Dave's knocking out tickets for the next BG concert, by the way. There's a third option. Ready to rock? However, your political career becomes jeopardised by a well-publicised scandal. And the university hastily grants you your degree and allows you to leave, sparing both parties' reputation.
Very stylish lady.
Yeah, lovely. After this fall from grace, you stand for chairman, or should that be chairwoman, for the Federation of Conservative Students in 1982, winning with a majority of 10 out of 500. To say a few words about those groundbreaking days, a very, very rare public appearance from Mr. Douglas Smith.
Thank you, Andy. I think I should tell you 3 anecdotes about Glenda. Can you hear me now? Yeah. That works? Good. 3 anecdotes about Mark, each of which illustrates a different facet of his character, his fascinating and unique character. I first knew Glenda when he was just in the process of moving into the wood. So that lets you know how long ago that was. And these things aren't necessarily chronological, but I promise you they're all true. When Glenda was living in St John's Wood High Street, then as now, there was a very gruesome murder which took place nearby, and bits of body started popping up in the Regent's Canal just round the corner from Glenda's flat. Glenda was tremendously excited by this, and he called me up and he said, "God, you can't believe what's happened. There's been this murder near me. It's really exciting. I'm going to try and find out a bit more about it." And I only have Glenda's word for this anecdote, but it has the ring of authenticity. Come 11 o'clock at night, Glenda goes for a little walk, and he walks down to the bottom of St John's Wood High Street and then walks along by the canal. And he's just poking around in the dark, trying to see if there's anything worth seeing. And suddenly hears this voice saying, "Oi, you!" He turns round and there's a policeman standing there. And the policeman comes up to him quite aggressively and says, "Can I ask you what you're doing?" And so Glenda very disingenuously says, "Yes, officer, I was just going for a walk. I live around the corner. I live in 64A St John's Wood High Street." And the officer visibly relaxes and says, "Oh, I see. All right, sir. Yes, absolutely." He said, "It's just we have to be careful because there's been some body parts found here, and that sort of incident does attract people with ghoulish tendencies." At which point Glenda says, "Oh yes, I know. Terrible."
Sick bastards.
I know, it's terrible. The second anecdote is we move more obviously towards the area that I'm meant to be talking about, which is the Federation of Conservative Students. When I first heard of Mark Glendinning, I wasn't very impressed I was a sort of young, kind of rampant right-winger. And someone said to me, hey, we've got this great new guy on our team. He's really good. He's excellent. I said, oh, what's his background? He said, oh, he's just joined us from Jeremy Thorpe's Liberal Party. It's a bit strange. But as I got to know the guy, I realised he was indeed a unique commodity. And this uniqueness was illustrated one day when we were in what was then Conservative Central Office, and the Federation of Conservative Students had a little room set aside for its activities. And at that time, the chairman was John Selwyn Gummer, who I think it'd be fair to say didn't get on very well with the Conservative students. Now, Glenda is someone who always likes to relax, even when he's working. And it was a hot summer afternoon, and we were all in the office printing stuff and writing out envelopes, the usual sort of stuff of sort of political hackdom. And Glenda decided he was a bit hot, so he started taking his clothes off. And eventually ended up just sitting behind the desk with only his underpants on. And it probably gives you an indication of Glenda that this wasn't regarded as in any way remarkable. Until the door swung open, and uniquely, John Selwyn Gummer walked in. And there's Glenda. And Glenda, just completely cool as a cucumber, started talking to him about the forthcoming conference as if there was nothing wrong. And to be fair to Gummer, a man of whom I've had many criticisms, acted just as cool and walked out again. My third anecdote, before I say goodbye, is simply to point out something about that election that he stood in. There were 500 people at a conference in Loughborough in 1984. Mark was our candidate for chairman, the sort of libertarian candidate for chairman, against a guy called Julian Samways, who was the wet candidate. And it was a really, really tight election. Nobody knew before the conference who was going to win. It was split down the middle. And the guy who was masterminding Mark's campaign, a guy called Mark McGregor, who was the mastermind with all the figures, had totted up and knew it was going to be absolutely on a knife edge. And Mark and I were standing at the back, waiting for Glenda to come up and make his hustings speech and take questions. So frantically doing our calculations. And up gets Glenda, makes a great speech, the audience applauds, it's time for questions. You've got to remember, this is the mid-1980s, and people were still quite small-c conservative at certain things. Up comes a planted question from one of the leading wets. Mr. Glendenning, is it true or is it false that you believe in the legalisation of heroin? So myself and Mark turned around to each other and said, oh, this is fine. He's just going to lie. He's going to win the election. He's going to lie. He doesn't want to frighten the children. It's obvious. We weren't even bothered. I was watching. Up comes Glenda and goes, yes, I do believe in legalising heroin. At which point we turned around, holding our heads in our hands, and oh my God, he has just lost us the election. He's destroyed everything. A year's work down the drain. You've got to remember, for those of you who've never been involved in student politics, how incredibly seriously people involved do take it. And it is a wonderful and happy story that in the end, despite the fact that he'd done it, or I like to think because he was honest and showed the kind of integrity which we know he possessed, that he won that election. And that third anecdote, at the risk of being sincere and bringing tears to your eyes, or at least bile to your mouth, I think this is the man, and this is the measure of the man. And I think in these terrible times for politics, where all the walls are collapsing around us, there is a potential revenge of the nerds, where those who have been cast out to the margins of politics will rise up and come to the centre. And I think in future we can look forward to Mark Glendenning as a Member of Parliament. Thank you.
Brilliant, Douglas, thank you. Following your exit as chairman, you are recruited to covert work in South Africa. You probably don't realise it, but he's a master of disguise. That is Glenda, if you really look her. Ladies and gentlemen, he's flown in from the Congo to pay tribute to the man tonight. Will you please welcome Mr. Philip Powell?
Glenda, this is a momentous night for me. I'm meant to have a whole cohort of my comrades from the south here tonight. Last night, one of them who shall remain anonymous was transporting as a favour Anthony, my wife, some very harmless painkillers that are sold in white sachets arrived at the airport security, and they leaked out in his luggage. So he had white powder all over it. Needless to say, he missed his flight. So I met Marc Henri 25 years ago in Paris at a student conference, and there was the start of a remarkable relationship between a student organisation in the UK and people a long way away. And I bring you the salutations from many of your comrades who served on the front line of the Cold War. We lost our war, you won your war. Many of the things that you predicted have sadly come true. You played a very significant role in our victories, and thank you for that. When I sent around a message to all of our friends there, asking them whether they had something profound to say about you, three themes emerged. And interestingly, your father mentioned an early rejection of anything to do with milk products. This is one of the things that caused amazement and left all of us astounded. Everywhere where Mark went, after 5 minutes of hospitality, his first thing would be he'd want to know where he could go out and buy a fresh carton of milk so you could make him a cup of tea. And this is something which, obviously, given that much of the milk wasn't even pasteurized, we never told them that in those days, has left a great impression on everyone down there. The second one is your remarkable and complete fear of spiders. And this is also something which has become a legend in the South. And the last one, I was told that you have a great affinity for rice pudding and cream puddings and cream custard, that's the one. But the bottom line is that 25 years later, all these remarkable traits of yours are still remembered.
And they're still here.
They're still there, yes. And I'm sure Jane... Porridge is another one. But in conclusion, really to say to you that a long list of people wanted to be here tonight to share this evening with you and send their greetings, and we hope that you'll come back to join us down there soon for a visit. Thank you very much.
You return from South Africa, the clouds begin to gather, and you find yourself facing hard times, but you don't despair, because we're all paying for your dinners. After enduring many jobs that do not befit your talents, you eventually begin a period of charitable employment at the Gordon Hospital, London's premier lunatic asylum, where you quickly discover a natural ability to help those with twisted minds. Ignoring medical protocol, you persevere with your own unorthodox form of therapy, even giving out yours and others' home telephone numbers to some of London's most disturbed patients. One such patient benefited greatly from your therapy. He can't be with us tonight, but do you remember this voice?
Hello. Would you like to hear a joke about the parrot and a pound of carrots?
Yes, live from the Gordon Hospital's secure wing, we have a few words from Mr. Lucky Lockdown.
Hello. Would you like to hear a joke about the parrot and a pound of carrots? You know the difference between parrot and a pound of carrots? A parrot sits on your shoulder, a carrot sits on your knee. Do you want to hear another joke? What's the difference between a parrot and spinny lizards? The lizards sit on your knee. Happy birthday, Mark. eating sweet food, potatoes, £2.45, basic market.
Light at the end of the tunnel appears in the form of the referendum party, and you're called upon to use your political talents to help save the country from the execrable march of the European Union. You work on the referendum party's 1997 election campaign. Following the untimely death of Sir James Goldsmith, you then helped set up the referendum movement and then the democracy movement, continuing the valiant fight against continued loss of sovereignty to the EU. He was your opposite number in the European movement. Here to say a few words from the enemy, Mr. Mark Littlewood.
Now, I know most of you here tonight, and a crushing majority of the British public outside, are very keen supporters, as I am, of dissolving the United Kingdom into a new federalist European superstate. I think that sort of response scores about 90% support on the Andrew Mackay-ometer, doesn't it? Long before I had the pleasure of meeting Mark, way back when he was only 16, and as Dougie has already alluded to, of course, Mark was a card-carrying member of the Liberal Party, and, worse still, a campaigner for Britain in Europe for the yes vote in the 1975 referendum. Sadly, as the years and decades have rolled by, Glenda has deserted the noble calling of his youth and has become one of the fiercest, most feared opponents of the enlightened federalist militia. In fact, I would go so far to say that this colossus of the political stage is now recognised as being personally one of the most serious obstacles to European integration.
I'll argue with that.
But for all this, and this shows the true measure of the man, he is held in very high esteem and regarded with great affection, even at the highest levels of the Bilderberg Trilateral Commission federalist circles in which I tend to operate. I think there are several reasons for this. Firstly, it's his considered, personally deeply intellectual and sensitive approach to debate. One of the first times I met Mark was at the height of the referendum party's powers, at the famous Ali Pali rally. I was organising a small young European movement counter-demonstration. Glendenian came up to us with the baying mob behind him. Look at those fucking federalist freaks! He intoned to the crowd. What a bunch of fucking nerds and dweebs. It was hard to argue against such a well-put and succinct case. Secondly, as the spiritual leader of the Eurosceptic cause, he is well loved because Mark protects us pro-Europeans from our weakest suit. Of course, he's not a traditional moat-dredging, duck-house-buying right-winger. Even the most cursory glance at his personal finances makes it nearly impossible for him to claim about the EU's accounts being unaudited year on year. Finally, my federalist militia and I believe that when we are ready to strike, to seize control of the TV stations and Parliament and hand them over to President Barroso, we used to believe that we would have to do this at the dead of night. Not so with Mark as the Eurosceptic leader. We just need to strike whenever the Jeremy Kyle show is on television. For those reasons, and many more, Mark is an admired indeed adored opponent. His name is whispered in hushed tones in pro-European circles. We Federalists also recognise him as a national treasure and indeed as a constitutional safeguard, considerably more worthy of a peerage than Michael Martin. Truly, we will never see his like again, and here is to the next 50 years of political debate.
He's really one of ours, I promise. He really is. This commitment to the cause is characteristic. You are single-minded and focused on what is important, eschewing what the mundane consider the normal path of life to take a much more individual and colourful track. This sacrifice allows you to work in an unconventional style. Master of disguise again. Your average day starts at 9 a.m. when you diligently read the day's news while supping cappuccino and munching on binoche at your favourite Café Rouge in St John's Wood. You then make a few important calls from the St John's Wood office. You arrive at the democracy movement in time for lunch, followed by a recuperative snooze, eventually rousing in time to organise the evening's entertainment. Like all good Bohemians, you're in your element, holding court and entertaining friends in the most atmospheric restaurants that London has to offer. One of your favourite venues is the Tyroler Hut on Westbourne Grove, where the lederhosen-clad proprietor, Joseph, falls for your boundless charm. Joseph allows you to host debates and evenings of Austrian dancing. Thanks to Summersvale. Live from the floor of the Tyroler Hut, we have a special message.
Can I say Fraulein Mark? Yes. Okay. Fraulein Mark, this is special thank you to you. And I'm not going to make any jokes because, as you know, a German sense of humor is not a laughing matter. Okay? I'm just going to play you your favorite song and wish you a very good time tonight and a happy first 50th, is it? Yeah. 50th birthday and a first birthday as well. So close it, and here we go.
When we went to the Tyroler Hut to film that, Ian and I, he was just dressed in his jeans and a t-shirt, and we said, oh, we've come in and we'd like to film you, could you do something about Mark? And he's like, Mr. Ben, he walked out and he walked back in. Lederhosen on, I'm ready to go. He loves you to bits. In your busy schedule, you find time to found the Sohemian Society, a heritage club that promotes greater awareness of the character and events associated with the history of Soho. You create this forum to counter the killjoy and culture-death preoccupations such as anti-smoking campaigns, obsessive risk avoidance, concerns about diet, fear of offensive statements, and pubs with sofas such as the one you're sat on. On a recent South Bank special, Melvin Bragg said of the Sohemian Society, we're going to get sued for this, brother. Mark is a cultural colossus. The country has never needed more this outlet which has challenged the fun-crushing, overbearing state. The country owes a great debt of gratitude to Marc Henry for sacrificing his life to this cause. Here to say a few words, biographer of Julian McLaren Ross, the Bohemian Society's president in death, a man who has become a great friend, Mr. Paul Willis.
Hiya, I feel a bit of a fraud having only known Mark since 2003, but I feel as if I've known him for much longer. He's provided me with so much entertainment. I could list all his wonderful characteristics, but the thing that really sticks with me is how much he makes me laugh. And in fact, there was an incident that I'll come on to tell you about that would seem a classic Mark incident, the sort of thing that I thought I'd left behind when I was about sort of 21. But I found myself the other day, I was sitting in the pub and I was thinking about this, and it made me just smile so broadly. I was sitting there by myself waiting for someone, and had this broad sort of more idiotic than usual smile, and I suddenly realised that I was sort of facing someone, and this guy gets very aggressive because he thought I was smiling at his girlfriend, and it wasn't a man you really wanted to get on the wrong side of, because he was a bit like, you know those old adverts, or not adverts, those diagrams in children's books that used to show the ascent of man. He was quite near the early stages, and he didn't take kindly to me smiling at his girlfriend, and it would have taken too long to explain the reason for this smile, so I had to just mumble and shrug it off. Not very stylish, but I escaped with my teeth intact. But the incident that made me smile so much, which seems a typical Mark incident, was I met Mark through the Bohemian Society, as Andy said. I was invited initially by Ian here to the very first of the Bohemians meetings, and Ian made it sound as if the Bohemian Society was like one of those Savile Row tailors with an established sort of 1820 little thing above it, and I turned up and discovered it was the very first meeting, and immediately got into conversation with Mark, and we've been in conversation ever since, really. Mark that evening said, "Oh, come along, we'll provide accommodation," and I had this a picture that was slightly at odds with the reality, and the accommodation was in fact in what Mark called the McLaren Ross Memorial Suite, which, in a tribute to the subject of my book, which was he ended up sleeping on park benches and on subway trains. It was sleeping in Mark's box room, but actually things got worse later, because on a subsequent event I either spoke at or went to, I found myself with Mark. We were chatting in his flat, and the box room was no longer available by that stage. It had been rented out to his friend Robbie, who's here, I'm sure, tonight. And Mark and I were chatting, and it got to about 2:30 in the morning, and Mark said, "You don't want to sleep on my floor. Robbie won't mind. You can always take your sleeping bag and use his bed." I said, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, no, fine." So I go off and make myself comfortable, fall asleep, and at must have been about 3:30 in the morning, there's this voice saying, "There's a man in my bed." and then I was sort of hopping through like some sack race into Mark's sitting room, and Mark was flat out in bed with Robbie over him saying, Glenda, who's that man in my bed?" And Mark slept through the whole thing. I don't know how he managed it. He was completely oblivious to this. And in the morning, I was asleep at the bottom or on the floor at the bottom of his bed in my sleeping bag. And Mark gets up, he starts peering at me, "What are you doing here?" Like I was sort of drawn towards his bed. Very strange. It seems a typical Mark story, and I hope there'll be many more, but I'm sure Robbie doesn't feel that way. Thanks very much.
Soho is your natural home and welcomes you as a lost bohemian. Culturally, you were born in the wrong decade. You'd have been much more comfortable in the slower pace and naivety of earlier decades, and should ideally have been born a chap. Soho, of course, falls in love with you, and here are some tributes from some Soho friends. Murray.
Whenever you're ready.
I am ready anytime. For red wine, I am ready. You see what? Happy birthday, obviously. But happy 50s sucks. I've been through it, mate. Situation is not very good. Wine doesn't help more. The hip is ailing. The other things, well, there's the work. Otherwise, come and see us soon, so you can replenish your whatever you need to replenish. And I drink to your health again. Cheers, mate.
How do you get to go to Mark and Glenda? All the best wishes and lots of love and sex and money.
Say Mark to the French in Soho. Love to Mark and the French in Soho. Good man. It's a great pub. Happy 50th birthday, Mark, from the French house.
You ready? Happy birthday, Mark. Buon compleanno. By the way, we'd like to see you back. You owe us £50. You know, Mark.
Happy birthday, Mark. Fantastic. Thank you, Norman.
We thought that was Norman Balance from the Coach and Horses. We jumped him as he got out his car, but it wasn't, and he just said it anyway. And then I think we thought we were going to mug him, and we just went, oh, happy birthday. We left it in. By this time, you're recognised as a leading authority on murder. Triggered by childhood obsessions with England's premier hangman, Albert Pierpoint, you have documented crime scenes and have an encyclopedic knowledge of some of Britain's best-known murderers. Here, the man brave enough to live alongside this obsession with you for 15 years, our favourite taxman, Mr. Paul Franklin. Yeah, Begson.
Thank you very much. Can we still meet next week, or is this scrubbed it? Right, okay. I tried to get a testimonial from Jack the Ripper, or the Governor as he's known, but we couldn't quite scrape that together. Mark, as many of you know, has been alluded to, has always had a passion for the dark side, for the terrible events that mark humanity's goings on. And I think I first became aware of that back in the day, whenever that was, when Mark was standing for election to be treasurer of Warwick Student Union. Treasurer, I don't know why, because it was great love of financial organisation perhaps, but he was standing for treasurer and he had to sing a song, tell a joke and answer a question. The song and the joke have happily been lost to history, but I clearly remember the question, which was, where do you stand on capital punishment? And Mark said, well, I'm intellectually opposed to it, but in favour on aesthetic grounds. And this should have been a warning to me when I took up his very generous offer to share his accommodation back in 1984. For a month, I asked for a month. Mark says it was a week. I'm sure it was a month, but anyway, 15 years later I had enough and I left. I remember very early in those days, a friend of Mark's who'd had a baby said, you know, she'd like to come round and show us the baby. And Mark, I think rather wisely, said, I don't think that's a good idea. And he said to me after, you know, vomit and excrement everywhere. It's no place to bring a baby. There was this physical challenge to one's health. I think a greater challenge is, as we've seen on the screen, a chap called William Beggs. Now William, known to many of you, strange chap William, member of the Conservative Party, but even stranger than that was his propensity to separate people from their heads whilst they slept. And William had been sent to a secure unit, not unreasonably, I think. Although Mark may disagree. But he got out on a technicality. They didn't gun the head back on, but he got out. And Mark said to me one day, you know, it's William Beggs chap. I've been talking to him. I'm going to invite him down to stay for a weekend in the flat, in the wood. And he said, "Are you okay with that?" I said, "I'm absolutely fine with that because I'm staying in a hotel for that weekend, so that's absolutely fine." And he said, "Oh, you know, you're having a sense of humour failure, Franklin." I said, "Well, I'd rather that than a sense of head failure." Tragically, William was shortly after returned whence he came, and the issue became academic. Now, Jane is in great company. The great love of Mark's life is Jane, very, very reasonably enough. But there's some other. Jane is in fantastic company. Ruth Ellis, John Reginald Christie, John Acid Bath Haig, Charles Family Man Manson, Albert Child Eater Fish, Lee Harvey Oswald, bringing politics and murder together there in one personality. Two great passions of mine. I could go on, I won't, and like everybody they met didn't go on very far, but never mind. Mark can occasionally bite off more than he can chew. He once discovered I remember him getting very excited because he discovered the location of the hotel in which Hanratty had slept the night before he committed the A6 murder, or didn't, depending on your point of view. And Mark went off there, and to his chagrin, this place was being converted into flats. But he found a window open in a sort of basement bit, and he got in, and he found the bedroom in which Hanratty actually slept. This place is complete darkness, there's buildings up. But he spent some hours there just soaking up the atmosphere, as you do, you know, who manners. I've never done, I've broken into a hotel and slept in a room where a murderer is, you know. But he did come back like a cat with his tail. He was very freaked by the whole experience, and he needed huge amounts of Horlicks and strawberry ice cream before he was even on the path to normality again. Mark's other great murder passion, John Haig, the acid bath murderer, brought to justice by the gallstones and Mrs. Durham Deacon, which didn't succumb to the acid. And Mark wrote a play about this chap, which was actually performed. I think, yeah. And the Broadmoor Amateur Dramatic Society have gone from strength to strength. No, seriously, it was performed to great acclaim. So let's not forget that. A murder without a hangman is like a vodka martini without a cherry, and Mark pursued a chap we all know, Sid Durnley, a very famous man, a hangman, well, the last to survive, and communicated, I think, with Sid. We got that cup on the table one evening, and there was you actually communicated with Sid, and got Sid's rope, I think. Is that am I forgetting?
It's getting a little far.
Oh, I'm getting overexcited. I'm sorry. The other great Hanratty story, Mark found where Hanratty had been brought up as a little kid up in Wembley. One Sunday afternoon, Mark says, "We're going up to Wembley to see the house." So I assume we're just going to, stand and look at the house. Oh, goodness me, that's where Hanratty was a boy. But no. Mark went up to the door. I was, half a mile away behind a tree dying of embarrassment. Very, very nice, and woman opened the door. So good afternoon. It's 2:30 on a Sunday afternoon. Probably thought he was from the what's-its. And he says, you probably don't know this. And this woman's got a baby and your house is the site of where one of Britain's most famous murderers was brought up as a little boy, and he lived here for many years with his family before he went on to become this famous murderer that hijacked this car and killed this chap and shot the woman low, but she's still alive, but he was dead. And some people think that he didn't do it, but I'm not so sure. I wonder if I could come in. She said no. She said, "I'd rather you wait until my husband gets home sometime in the next 37 years. And Mark actually wanted to stay till this chap came back that evening. I actually managed to persuade him that we should go. Anyway, to round up, the great essayist Thomas de Quincey wrote a very famous essay called Murder as One of the Fine Arts, and I think that Mark's life is very much a testimony to that wonderful statement. And well done, carry on. See you later.
I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I wrote to D Hall, HM Prison, Peterhead, on behalf of Glenda this evening, and received a reply this morning from Mr. Beggs, who wrote and thanked me for the letter. I won't read it all out. "Sadly, I cannot be with you in person, as I've been detained by Her Majesty the Queen at one of her lesser-known Aberdeenshire residences. I do, however, hope to be in a position to attend next year if you're planning a 51st party. You can keep abreast of developments on the HughDoc web server, Beggs vs United Kingdom, number 251-33/06. Last paragraph. Mark Henry has been a personal and political inspiration to so many. He really deserves this recognition, and I genuinely hope that all goes to plan and that no surprise proves too much of a shock. Ian Beggs. The letter's yours. At this point, I was going to read out all the people that couldn't make it this evening, and I've left the list at home, so I'll give you that another time. But they were sending in screeds of stuff. Please read this out, please read this out. And I just blanked it all off. But there's one guy who's hassled me to the point where he's threatening to do something. And if it was anybody else, I wouldn't believe it, but it's Mr. Hoyle. And so I've promised, for fear of a spider in my bed, that I'll just read this out. And if you don't mind, it's not too boring, I'll just whack away. Dear Mark, dearest Mark, I'm very distressed not to be with you this evening at this marvellous event organised by your friends. I am, as you know, engaged in Christian missionary outreach work on the Chad-Sudan border. I hope that Andy will have the time to read out a few of my thoughts. To those who know Glenda, he is many things. I like to think of him as a slightly less focused, tea-drinking version of Colonel Kurtz, surrounded by his Montagnard army, otherwise known as the Federation of Conservative Students. I was proud to be one of those foot soldiers. Mark talent spotted me, I use that word loosely, whilst I was an undergraduate at Warwick University. I remember well the first summons to visit him in his hall of residence at Warwick. I quickly realised this was no normal individual when, while offering me tea and fairy cakes, he urged me to flick through a book on Psycho the movie, drawing my attention in particular to the still photographs of the shower scene. I immediately realised that I'd found in Glenda a fellow spirit, and the rest is history. I still wake up at night in a cold sweat, realising that had I not met Glenda all those years ago, I would now be working as an accountant in Godalming, Surrey, or a solicitor in Newbury, Berkshire. Glenda motivated and inspired a whole generation of libertarian conservatives. Some are now in Parliament, some will be entering Parliament for the first time next year, and many more will remain active within the political industry. Mark has many attributes, not least of which is loyalty and a sense of humour, but above all he has always been courageous and focused in the defence of freedom, whether it be arguing the case against the European Union in Torquay, working with anti-communist guerrillas in Mozambique, or playing football for Nkata in Zululand, South Africa. To his many friends, he is truly the master. David Boyle. You've touched the lives of many, which has not been a one-way street, and some of those that have touched yours, unfortunately, are no longer with us, but their influence on you lives on. Absent friends. Lord Shawn. George Melly. Malcolm Spider Webb. The wonderful Dr. Chris R. Taylor. And your first love, Boswell. We couldn't cover all of Mark's obsessions this evening. His football, he's a massive QPR fan and the greatest goalscorer Westminster Wanderers ever had. His art, like his father, he's a wonderfully talented painter, and as referenced before, his cross-dressing. His Dorothy is absolutely amazing. At this point, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming, and for those that have organised the evening. The League of Gentlemen, which was the organisation we formed in order to put this together, and my special thanks go to Ian and Sally, who basically, without which this would not happen. This is where I pay tribute. I'm actually going to say a few words about the person who's most important in Mark's life, and that's Jamie, who's sat here. She's an amazing person in her own right, an extremely talented artist, the most warm and loving person you could possibly imagine. The reason I'm saying these things is because Jamie keeps Mark safe. And we thank you for that, Jamie. Nobody does it better.